We have created in the medical space kind of like algorithms of how to address not just substance use, but just so many different things. And so it's really stepping out of that algorithm and saying that, hey, like just because this person isn't where we want them to be right now doesn't mean we can't get there together.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Hey, real quick, before we get the episode started, wanted to pop in here because this is National Volunteer Appreciation Month. And if it weren't for volunteers at the Phoenix, we would not even be what we are. So we would be remiss not to take a little bit of time to send out some huge, huge gratitude to every single volunteer that keeps the Phoenix going.
Yes. And Liz, you have a very special relationship with volunteering, don't you?
Yes, I absolutely do. Yeah, one of the reasons that I was really excited to record this little segment is because volunteering is close to my heart, not only because I am lucky enough to know and work with volunteers pretty regularly, but also because I was a volunteer. When I started with the Phoenix, it was as a team member and super early in recovery, and I just remember looking up to the people that were wearing the Phoenix shirts and in just, amazement and wanting to, someday be able to be a leader in that way and be proud of this journey in that way. And when I had the opportunity to start teaching yoga as a volunteer, it changed me. It changed not only my relationship with just the Phoenix community, but also my relationship with recovery, with my own ability to be proud of myself and hold space for others and help them to see that they, get to be proud of themselves too, because we're on this really cool journey. And now seeing how that has grown and just getting to know these volunteers, you're going to hear from one of our incredible volunteers in the episode today. It blows me away that this is a community that is able to give so much, and just to see the way that is just changing the whole entire world. That is just changing stigma. It's changing the way we view recovery, the way we are in our own recovery. And every person who raises their hand and steps into that role is a freaking superhero.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think volunteering in general is a life-changing practice. And I know a lot of times when we come in to step into a new life or step into recovery or step into intentional living, we may look and see like, well, what do I have to give? And the only thing we may have to give to begin with is our time. And so whether it be showing up and making coffee somewhere or going to donate at a canned food drive or like helping people out who are serving food to the less fortunate on Thanksgiving or a holiday or something like that, like just volunteering in general is almost an act of selflessness because you get outside of we get outside of ourselves to be able to show up for others, but it does so much for us.
Yeah. So true. Yeah. And the volunteers at the Phoenix, they show up. It's like the whole concept of kind of starting before you're ready. You don't have to be a yoga teacher. You don't have to be an instructor of anything. Like we have folks who are just out there sharing Facebook posts, and that's incredible. Like that is a huge way to get this message out there. There are people that are instructing on the virtual platform. There are people instructing in person in communities where nobody even has heard of the Phoenix before. And then, a year from that day, suddenly there's a thriving community and people that just, their entire life path has changed because that one volunteer decided to pick up the torch and bring the Phoenix there. So for every volunteer that is out there right now, including the beautiful one that we're about to have a conversation with on this podcast, we just want to extend our just deepest appreciation. We wouldn't be here without you. We wouldn't want to be. And we're so grateful for you.
Thank you for all that you do. We love you. We appreciate you. It's an absolute privilege to receive the energy that you provide. And we're so thankful for you.
Yes. All right. Let's talk to one of these superheroes. So on with the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rise, Recover, Live, the podcast. I am your host, Bryce the Third.
And I am your other host, Liz McKean, and we are so excited about the guest that we have to share with the community today.
So much energy in this guest, and I shared some energy with this guest on the dance floor. We're not gonna get all into it as to what that exactly means, but let's just say that I have experienced this person's energy, and it is full, loving, sunshine, and all that good stuff. And I look forward to learning more about this guest, but I need Liz to introduce who this guest is.
Well, it is an honor to introduce Faizah Sharif, MD, MBA. And Faizah is a volunteer with the Phoenix at Boston, also is a current medical resident at UC San Diego in internal medicine, and comes to us with some very cool perspectives about recovery, the recovery community. And yeah, Bryce and I were so lucky to meet Faizah at a Phoenix Gathering conference recently, which we were just saying felt like it was a really long time ago, but it was just last month, wildly enough. So it's a real treat to be able to be in this room with you again, Faizah. Welcome. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked. I can't wait to kind of just, talk to my friends again. It's going to be great.
Hey, and we'll just dive right in. But first and foremost, how's your energy today?
Oh, on another level. I'm a little bit nervous, but super stoked. I can't wait to kind of just delve really into it. It's 9 or 10 o'clock on the West Coast right now. So the sun is up and things are shining.
Bright and early. Let's get your day started out right. So, Liz, do you have any way that you want to start this conversation specifically before I dive in?
So like I said, we were so lucky to be able to meet and chat with Faizah at this conference, but I feel like we didn't get really into your story and how you kind of came across this community, because I know you have a different relationship with recovery than those of us who are in recovery. So I'd love to hear kind of how you wound up in this work and in this community, and how we got so lucky to get you here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think my journey to Phoenix is something that's, incredibly personal. I am so grateful that it ended up happening. So I was actually in Boston when this all started. I was a medical student at Boston University, and I was actually very interested in the CrossFit space. So I was part of a box in Boston at that time. And I honestly just came across the Phoenix on Facebook. So I was just like looking at different gyms in the area, and I was like, oh, wow, like this is literally walking distance from where I live. So it became something out of convenience. And then I walked in, scheduled a class, and was just kind of blown away by the community that was built there in a way that I hadn't ever experienced at any other CrossFit gym previously. So I first kind of went in not really understanding what the Phoenix's mission was, and not really understanding kind of the culture behind it. But what I kind of gleaned from the community was that there is just so much that I didn't understand about the recovery space, especially as like a medical student at the time, and even as a medical provider now. So when I kind of walked in, I just let everyone around me teach me what I didn't know. And so through that journey and through that process, I started understanding my own biases and places where I could be a better provider and I could provide better care to individuals walking through my door. And that was kind of how I delved into Phoenix. And what kind of kept me there was really the community and the people there that kept teaching me about myself and teaching me about my journey, as a contributor in this space, and just the community at large.
That's incredible.
Now was recovery already on your radar before you came across the Phoenix? Like, is that something that you all learned in medical school? Like, is that something that you delve deep into?
Yeah, so Boston Medical Center in particular, which is where I did my medical part of my medical training, had a huge patient population that was experiencing substance use and substance use disorder. And so a lot of the rotations that I had, especially in the internal medicine, as well as, the psych dual diagnosis programs, were with individuals who were going through that journey and kind of at different extremes. So there was individuals who were actively withdrawing that we had to put on, high dose medications to get them stabilized. And then there was other individuals who were seeking out support through these dual diagnosis programs that were kind of on a different step of their journey. And so I had some touch points with the recovery space, but not enough to really understand what these individuals were going through and the challenges that they faced to even seek help or even, present to the hospital in a way that was like, obviously they're incredibly vulnerable. And so in a way that they can actually seek that support that they need. And so I think what the Phoenix did for me was really give me a deeper understanding of that journey for individuals and allow me to approach them in a more empathetic way. And so that was a huge contributor to how I started integrating the Phoenix into my practice.
And this is huge. I'm currently reading this book called The Outward Mindset, and it's by the Arbinger Institute. And it's like focusing on, helping with people to see people as people. So therefore we can come up with like bottom up solutions. And as a person in recovery that like my primary care physician was one of the first people that I reached out to like, I didn't know what I was asking for. Like, I didn't know what I was going through. Like, I had never experienced this. I'm like, look, something's going on. And at that point in time, back in 2012, where we've grown a lot, right, as a society, as a community. But, what she told me, she just told me, like, look, it sounds like something wrong with you, and gave me a piece of paper and sent me on about my way. Whereas, like, once we have the exposure to, this is what this person is experiencing. Like, what if I was in the shoes of this person? We begin to come up with like different solutions that have empathy and allow for people to see people as people. And so with your exposure to the Phoenix and now you considering yourself like an ally or a supporter, like how has that helped you to show up in your medical practice in the way that you serve the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like kind of going back to checking your own biases. When I walked through the door at the Phoenix, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I didn't really understand that community. And I really hadn't made any active efforts to do so prior to that point in time. And so I kind of walked in really with like an open mind. And that helped me really kind of navigate the space in a way that was very centered around the individuals impacted by substance use. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing as a medical student was really bringing the Phoenix to my patients kind of after they've gone to the initial withdrawal period, and really kind of addressing the stigma associated with that. So a lot of times it can going back to how individuals usually present to the hospital. It's usually that somebody has found them and they're incredibly, they're actively withdrawing. It's a state of mind is very different than when people are actively seeking support. And a lot of times they don't even want to be there. And so kind of walking through that door and meeting them where they're at, and then finally walking them through that point of that early stage of withdrawal, and then to that point of where now you're at least in 48 hours of sobriety, because they kind of have to be when they're in the hospital for that long. And then talking to them about ways in which they can build that community and build that support is something that I started doing kind of early on in my medical career. And really just kind of speaking to them as people, as you mentioned previously, Bryce, is just really talking to people as we, I feel like a lot of times we try as providers to create a paternal environment for patients, which doesn't necessarily support their journey. And a lot of times it means that they stop seeking support and stop seeking help. So it's really telling them, hey, we're here whenever you feel like you need that support, or whenever you feel that you want to talk about this, here are resources that we can help integrate you with. And so I think that that's really a huge part of it, is just really trying to address that stigma, really trying to check my own biases when patients like that come through, and really meeting them where they're at with empathy, kindness, and just kind of an open door policy.
Faizah, what biases, I mean, I feel like we tend to think we know what those look like, but what biases, like, were you feeling that were coming up for you personally? And what do you see, maybe coming from other providers?
Yeah, I think that that's something that's really hard to, look in the eye yourself. Like, I think recognizing your own biases and telling yourself, like, you don't know everything. And so a lot of times when we're, first of all, starting as medical students, we learn about like the pathophysiology, or just kind of like how withdrawal happens, or like what we do to treat withdrawal, and the science behind withdrawal, and the science behind substance use, which is really not that clear still. There's because there's so much stigma surrounding it, the research behind it is still pretty poor, and we don't really understand how to fully address the various stages of substance use at this point. But with that all being said, within the context that we have currently in the medical space, it's really realizing that a lot of times when people we see our withdrawing, we're like, why can't they fix that? Why can't they get to a point where they're not withdrawing anymore? Why can't they get to the point where they can seek help and like be consistent? And I think that those were things that I intrinsically felt like the very, very beginning of my medical school journey, because I didn't really understand that was what I was thinking until the Phoenix was like,
totally.
Wait, no, like you have to realize, like, each individual journey is so specific, and the triggers are so different for everyone, and how you approach these people is unique. And I think that was something that I didn't realize, because we have created in the medical space kind of like algorithms of how to address not just substance use, but just so many different things. And so it's really stepping out of that algorithm and saying that, hey, like, just because this person isn't where we want them to be right now doesn't mean we can't get there together. And that wasn't even just something that I understood about substance use. It's really something like a long-term illness, like even diabetes. Like, how do you get buy-in? How do you get people to care about themselves and care about the people around them, and the people that are being impacted by them not necessarily receiving the support that they need. And so it's like, I needed to treat substance use as something that was very similar to everything else that we've learned in medical school. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to giving your patient, or giving whoever you're treating, that space and that voice, so that they feel like they're driving their care, and that they feel like you are there to support them through whatever stage of that journey that they're in. Yeah.
I think, just like you said, it's hard and it's scary to look it in the eye, and just like all the different stigmas and prejudices that we have that are just so internalized. It's kind of shocking when it rears its head, and it's one of those things that once you start to see the person behind the thing that's so harshly judged, it's hard to unsee it. But it's I don't know if I've said this on this podcast. I don't even know if I've said this to you, Bryce, but I used to be a nurse. I worked in hospitals. I was a nurse for years back. And so I have, some healthcare experience there, and it was before recovery for me, for very many reasons. And I remember, going before you walk into a patient's room for the first time, like opening up the chart, and you look over their medications, you look over their medical history, you look over, conditions that they are, currently, or long-term battling. Also, my cat decided to say hi. And the thing that would pop up occasionally is ETOH, and I don't even know if that's still the way things are coded now, or if it was just where I was. But if I saw ETOH on the thing on their chart, this might have been somebody that just had hip surgery, they're not there for anything to do with substance use, but they're just saying that just means that's just like the code for alcohol. This person has had a drinking problem at some point. And immediately, like, I can tell you as a person who currently had a drinking problem that I hadn't, acknowledged yet, but as I would just read that on the chart and be like, oh boy, like, what am I walking into? Because there's just so much of that internalized and, external judgment about somebody, and like looking at that as a as a personality flaw instead of an actual battle that this person has possibly even gotten past. Maybe this person isn't decades in recovery, and they're just, I tell every doctor that I go to that this is something that's in my what's happening. And then if we have somebody who there's something in their chart about having a history of addiction to other substances, immediately the conversation comes up about drug seeking, and that changes the way, a patient's pain can be managed. And again, this was many years ago, so I know that there's been changes in the conversation since, but I just am looking back at like the way that would immediately hit my brain as a person who actually was actively addicted to something and not able to really even acknowledge it yet personally. And that probably had such a huge impact on how long it did take me to finally come face to face with the fact that I needed to get help, because I was, there's just so much judgment there. So thank you for bringing that conversation here, because it's hard and it sucks. And I hate that's just in us so much, but these are the conversations that help it to bring it out into the open and take some of the power away from it.
And so what do you see? What do you see is the active mindset? Like, is there a collective mindset? Does it lean towards this? Because like you said, you've used the word paternal. And I feel like this is like a season of the show, because we've had somebody on recently that, we talked about saviorism. Or even maybe just a season in my life when, I'm reading the book that I'm reading, focusing on solving problems, but also like not coming to the table like, this is your problem and this is how I'm going to solve it, and this is the solution, or dealing with people in philanthropy, looking, to help aid in development, and like seeing how there are certain people, it's like, I'm donating my money to this because this is the problem and I see it as that. And it's like, no, actually, you could do so much more work, like if you were to put some of these resources here, especially with what it is that you say you want to contribute to. So what do you think the zeitgeist is, or what do you think the culture is within like clinical right now that you're seeing? Is it, are we leaning towards bottom up solutions, like empowering the community to have a say and a voice in the solution, or are there still some hurdles? And if there are some hurdles, what are they?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love the fact that you use the word zeitgeist. Haven't heard that in a minute. But I mean, yeah, so I can't speak for the community at large. I think it's very specific to the space that you're in, the place that you're in, the patient populations that you're dealing with, and the infrastructures that hospital systems have to be able to provide those resources. So, and again, like the more touch points you have, the more capable you are of making that long lasting change, and the more that institutions feel like they can justify having infrastructure there financially. To address that issue. So I can kind of speak to Boston Medical Center specifically, having a huge patient population that experiences substance use, and them having pretty strong infrastructure to help support those individuals with providers that are specifically trained in the addiction space, and create an environment where the language that's also being used is very patient-centered and patient-guided. So I think speaking, at large, I think there's definitely a lot more work to do. And I think that some of the hurdles are the stigma that we previously stated, as well as the infrastructures that hospital systems might have to allocate resources effectively. And I guess like in their case, like justifiably to the substance use space, that might be things that hopefully will start being addressed moving forward. And then a huge part is also just like provider buy-in, and really having providers trained in that space and how to communicate with patients meaningfully, who are actively experiencing addiction, or have been in or are in the journey towards recovery. So I think there's multiple facets, some of them structural, some of them personal, that will take some time to, figure out. But I think that there are people who are doing such great work to make that, to help at least break down that stigma and make healthcare systems understand that this is something that is worth addressing, and worth, talking about more openly. And so I think that there's a lot of work to do, but I'm incredibly hopeful about what that's going to look like moving forward. And I hope that, like each individual provider has the capability of impacting that one patient that walks in. So yeah, I think there's things that are being done. I think there's a lot more work to do. And I think we can hopefully get there.
Yeah.
Okay. So say there's a clinician or a medical practitioner listening to this episode right now, and it's like, okay, there's more work to be done, and I'm ready. I'm itching. I'm ready to contribute to this space. What do you think are some of the things that people could start? Like, what are some of the first steps that people can start right now, this very moment, to kind of create a space that is more welcoming, more destigmatized, and more focused on a bottom-up approach?
Yeah, so I think that as clinicians, we have such insane power. And I say that with I say that with, it's like a lot of like the whole, like with a lot of power comes responsibility. I don't know. I don't know what the phrase is.
Spider-Man quotes. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
something
With great power come great responsibility.
There we go.
I see you.
Rice. I don't know what I was saying. Okay. So I don't understand pop culture. So long story short, I think that's kind of in part how I perceive it, is that we're in an incredibly unique position where people come to us in a very vulnerable state. They share things with us that normally they don't share with other people. And I think what clinicians can really do is listen to their patients. I think that that's like the smallest, yet most meaningful and impactful thing that we can do as clinicians is learn from our patients, let them guide us, let them teach us, let them, let them give us food for thought, because the most that I've ever learned were from the people around me who were actively experiencing things that I may never understand. And so I think that clinicians should go in, and I don't think that it should be, the whole concept of like the onus is on the patient to like teach this provider. No, I don't think that that's really what it is. I think it's really understanding that unique position that you're in, and having a dialogue with the patient to help them understand what's best for you. And I think with that process and building that patient clinician relationship is how we can first start working on ourselves, because I don't think you can really contribute to a space if you don't understand it. And understanding it really comes down to understanding the people that are in it. And those people are what should be driving that change. And we are there as kind of ancillary supporters and allowing for them to use their voice meaningfully. And so I think the first step is really just recognizing where our own biases are, talking to our patients and learning from them. And then in terms of meaningfully contributing to the space, I think some things that I personally did was I went to AA meetings, not even as a person in recovery, but just as a supporter of my friend who was in AA. And I was like, I never knew what that meant. I told patients that they should go there, but I don't know what that meant. And I was like, okay, maybe I should figure out what I'm like recommending to people.
Yeah.
Maybe I should like do that and see what that means. And I think that that's a huge hurdle for us. And I think that that's something that's a place where we can start. And then obviously getting involved with the Phoenix, like a plug right there. This is really, I think that's a huge, like, national / now currently international space where people like myself can get involved and learn in a place that won't judge you for not knowing and for really having those preconceived notions.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's, that's the cool thing. I know I always think, we have folks that are possible first time listeners of the podcast and, and hopefully they're learning about the Phoenix just from links that we share and everything. But, for anybody who is new to it, like you're just going and doing fun stuff with other people who are sober, whether they're a person in recovery or someone who's just supporting their recovery community. It's just a safe, sober environment to do a workout or go to yoga or write poetry or something, something that is just meaningful, that brings people together. And, as opposed to like the very structured format of an AA meeting, Phoenix is peer to peer, led. And it's just, let's do fun things and let the conversations come up in this supportive way. And I think that the thing that kind of the parallel here is it's just like we're all just people, just like recognizing our own humanness and everyone else's humanness. And I think with healthcare, there's thousands of podcasts out there about how, the healthcare system and all the ways that, it could improve. But when it comes to like the faces of healthcare, like the doctors, like, like you're a human, and there's having that, being lifted up in this place of power, not only, makes those of us who are going to the doctor sometimes see you as maybe more than human, you're just going to, everything, you're going to fix all my problems. You're going to tell me what to do and I'm just going to do it. But also, I know they're like, that's a thing that I've heard from doctors, that it's like, I got to remember that, like, I don't know everything, but then still keep that level of confidence with the patient where you are showing that you know a lot of things, so that's a really challenging place to be in. And I think as people that are consumers of healthcare, knowing that the doctor is human and continues to learn, and just letting every one of those interactions be human to human is where, all of this healing starts and where all of the messy stuff happens. And so there's no perfect answer and there's no one individual where it's going to be the answer. And pumped just the conversations are happening.
I kind of want to switch gears just a little bit, because you seen the Phoenix on Facebook, and then you came to an event, a program, you CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
And then not only did you stick around, but you decided to become a volunteer. And this is somebody like who, you're a medical practitioner, but you haven't had any, you haven't had any personal experience with, like, lived experience with these things, right? And you came to just kind of see what was going on. So what was it about the community that really, like, grabbed you? And, like, how has that helped to improve your quality of life? Because I must say, now we can talk about the dance floor.
This is Bryce's super smooth segue into the worm conversation.
So we was out on the dance floor. Faizah was one of like maybe 3 people who attempted to do the worm. Like, when I say high energy, when I say like life at a party, when I say like, oh, this person is really enjoying themselves, when I say like this is the power of community, because there were a lot of people I came with, some people, and there were some people that told me like I had that specific event, like I had to go. I'm not really ready to be around a lot of people right now. So to see you be able to be comfortable in your skin, for me, that's like affirmation. Like, oh, if you can like wiggle on the floor, like I can be exactly who it is that I am right now. Like, and I'm in the perfect place, right? So you are the community now. You know what I'm saying? So what has kept you around, and tell us a bit about like the motivation to just be you as fully as possible in these spaces.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. It's like authenticity. Like, there's like so many things that we talk about.
I can tend to stack things and questions. I get super excited. Let me know if you want me to bust it down. We can bust it down.
I know. Oh my God. Well, wow. Talked about the worm. I almost broke my face also in that process. But
We're so
here we
glad you
are.
didn't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So my origin story with the Phoenix, which as many people in Boston have already heard, but I think it's hilarious. What happened was long story short, I reached out to, I started in Boston. I reached out. I was like, oh, I want to drop in for a class. The class timings that were sent to me were 6:30, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30. So I was like, okay, usually going to CrossFit, you have to show up 15 minutes early, sign a waiver, get all those things set up. And so I was like, I showed up at 6:15, and then the class had already started. And I was like, wait, somebody told me that it started at 6:30. Who was this person? And I was like, oh, I've been emailing this person, Mike. I don't know who they are. And at that point, Mike Underhill, he was at the Boston location, and he was like, I don't remember messaging you anything. And I was like, what is happening? Why is this such a, I don't understand. So I was like, whatever, I'll walk in. They were like, you can go ahead and take the class. It's totally fine. So I went, took the class, walked out, and then we started talking, and I was like, wait, here's the email. This is literally the email I was communicating with. He was like, oh my God, you've been communicating with Mike out in Colorado.
Oh no.
And so
That's hilarious. Mike's like, yeah, come on over. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. And so Mike in Colorado, shout out to you. I've never met you before, probably. I don't know, but I'm sorry I never showed up to your 6:30 class. And so I think that was just this whole comedy of errors that ended up happening in my first interaction with the Phoenix, but everyone was just so awesome about it and so kind. And then we obviously just had a laugh at the very end. And I was like, these people are great. I really like them. And that was kind of the really just the beginning of it. And we at that point was drop in for a week, kind of assess out the community. And so I went in, and for some reason I was like, I don't know, I don't really know much about recovery. I don't really think I should be here. I don't feel like this community isn't necessarily for me, but I was like, you know what, just keep going. There's something that you need to uncover about being so uncomfortable. And so I went day after day. I was like, I'm going to go every day this week. I'm going to see what this is all about. And by the end of the week, I started just loving everyone there. Everyone was so kind and so, authentic to themselves. And that gave me the space to be who I envisioned myself to be. And because I was so uncomfortable, it gave me times to have actual reflection after I left, being why was I so uncomfortable? What about being there made me feel this way? And it was because I just didn't understand the community. And I was like, I don't think I should be here. This isn't for me. But then over time, I began to realize no, everyone in life is just recovering from the human experience, and myself included. Being a medical student, we had really long hours. We studied all the time. I didn't really know what it was like to do much else. And then the Phoenix gave me that space. It gave me an opportunity to contribute in a way that I didn't think I would be qualified necessarily to contribute. And I think with that self-reflection and that ability to just have people who were also kind of meeting me where I was at every single day, I was able to finally understand what that unique position meant for me. And I was like, I am a medical student moving forward. I will be a doctor moving forward. I have this, and now I have this community and this space that supports me. And I feel like they did such a great job kind of welcoming me. And then I just felt like now I want to contribute back because what they gave me was something that was completely invaluable, which was helping me understand myself and helping me understand my own journey. Even though it wasn't in recovery specifically, I think it helped me grow and come to who I am today. I think the Phoenix was such a pivotal point in my life because I think that was when my perspective of the world actually shifted. It was January of 2019 that I can say I sent that email and I walked through the door and everything kind of changed after that point in time. everyone that I met there was just so kind, so supportive. And I realized that that's kind of what I wanted to do for people moving forward as well, is be so comfortable with myself that they felt comfortable being themselves. And so,
Well, mission accomplished.
I know.
I would tell you that.
Oh my God. That just like, that made my heart just like swell up. That's so incredible. Just like, it's just that space that is just created by humans that are just like you said, just accepting one another and just, allowing us to grow and be uncomfortable and work through that in this little bubble of support and, the safety that creates. And I think your experience was really common, like your initial feeling of like, I haven't had a substance use disorder, so maybe I'm taking up space that is not for me or something like that. I know when I first started inviting my family to events, they were like, well, we don't want to take somebody's spot, and I'm like, no, this is the more truly you are supporting the community by being part of it. Like, we obviously as a nonprofit, you can donate, you can, volunteer, and those are, incredible gifts, but to just be there exactly as you are is just all that is needed. And it's the best way to be a supporter and to grow personally and to grow together. And oh my gosh, that's so cool. What do you do as a volunteer? What kind, do you run programming, or I don't even think I know?
Yeah. So when I was in Boston, so I've moved out to San Diego not that long ago, moved out in like June. So prior to that point in time, I was helping with CrossFit coaching. And then I got roped into, no pun intended, to start with rock climbing,
awesome.
Which I also love. So great. So I was helping a little bit with the rock climbing space, but mostly CrossFit, and a volunteer coach at that point in time. And then I kind of allowed for Phoenix to take a space in whatever patient care I was also doing, which is providing patients with the Phoenix as like a resource to go to. Once we were done talking, being like, hey, this is a community that also exists that you could go take part in. Because I was part of a rotation where I was working in the dual diagnosis programs. So a lot of those individuals were kind of at the point where they did want support in their recovery. So helping route individuals to the Phoenix was another thing that I was doing in Boston. Since I moved to San Diego, it's been a little bit more challenging. Residency schedule is not the prettiest. But I have been trying to go to more of the programming out here and see how I can contribute there. Awesome. But the same kind of thing applies where I've been telling some of the patients that I've seen about the Phoenix and about the community that exists within San Diego at large.
That's so awesome. I feel like so often when, sometimes this happens with our partnerships with like treatment centers or, I don't know, all sorts of different places and people that we partner with who are kind of helping to shine a spotlight on the Phoenix as another resource, because the typical suggestion is go to AA, or go to 12-step, whatever version of that is appropriate. And that's, an incredible resource. And there are now more, there's, smart recovery, there's all sorts of different kind of things, but having Phoenix be on that list of places that people can go and find community is so cool. And I think often the folks that are recommending it don't actually, like you said, take part in it, like to say like, oh, you could go here and this is a community that I'm in, like that is so much more powerful than be like, go and get services from this, which there certainly is a place for that. But I think the fact that you're in it and like inviting people, like that's an invitation. That's like, wrapping your arms around someone. That's amazing. Love it.
Yeah, that's huge. So we are inching towards the end of our podcast episode, and it wouldn't be a podcast episode if it wasn't for Liz's special, magnificent.
I'm going to create my own theme music for our ridiculous intro to this question.
Liz has a question, and she's going to ask you.
Oh, Liz just can't wait to ask this question.
Let's go.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm ready.
Faizah, if you could just pull back the curtain of time and send a message to a version of yourself that was prior to this version that is sitting in our little studio today, what would that message be? What words might you say, being who you are now, knowing what you know now?
Wow.
See, it did deserve a theme song. Dun, dun, dun. That's
I know. Drum roll, please.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll just be keep doing what you're doing. A huge part of it is just navigating that authentic self, is just continuing to be reflective, continuing to interact with the world in an active way, because I think that you can easily just become passive absorber of whatever is going on around you. I think I would tell my previous self to, sit with those thoughts and really reflect. Just keep going back. I don't know. I feel like there's so many. I feel like the question of, what would you do differently kind of comes up when that, like when you're giving yourself advice, it's like, what would you, past Faizah, have done different, like future Faizah have done differently for past Faizah? I think it's just because I'm so grateful for where I'm at now. I would just tell past Faizah to keep doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
keep growing, keep learning, keep having that open mind, and just being who you are is what brings people to you.
Heck yeah.
So many gems and jewels from Faizah today. It's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show. It's been an absolute privilege to be able to boogie with you on the dance floor and see your energy in person. And I think you are a wonderful person, a contribution to the community, and just like a role model for real. I take a lot just from you being here and what you shared. Like that's been an addition to me and my personal journey as well. So thank you for coming and sharing everything.
Oh my gosh. Thank you both for being so incredible and for giving me the opportunity and the space to have this conversation. I mean, man, I was so stoked when I said stoked like 3 times already, but I was like so excited. I think it explains who I am. I was just like so enthralled. There we go. By the conference and meeting you guys in person for the first time. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity as well. So I can't wait to see how I can continue to contribute, and whatever that might look like from where I am now. But man, I'm so excited for what the future has.
Oh, same. Yeah. I think the original name for the Rise conference that we were at was the Stoke event. I think so. You're right on brand there. Like your thesaurus and our thesaurus must be earmarked on the same page. Well, I just want to echo what Bryce said, that this has been a really incredible conversation, and we were excited. We were stoked, excited, all those things. We're pumped leading up to it, and did not disappoint. I am just really so grateful that you came on and shared. And I would say the same thing to past Faizah. I would say the same thing to current Faizah. Just keep doing what you're doing, because exactly as you are and who you are is what contributes to this. And I'm sure many communities, and every single one of them is so fortunate to have you. So thank you for being you.
Thank you both. Yeah. Oh my God. Is stoked like the fire, like getting the fire going kind of vibe?
Yeah. See?
Lovely.
And Phoenix from the ashes and the flames, like it's all...
Exactly.
We got some good stuff here. All right. Well, I feel like we could go down this road and it would be pretty fun. But because we know you are incredibly busy, we're gonna wrap up here and just say thank you once again, and thank you to everyone who is listening. This is all of us. This podcast community includes you just by plugging in your earbuds. So we're eternally grateful that you chose to do that. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. We come out with new episodes every single Tuesday with very cool stories, very cool people. I know Bryce has been saying this. I'm going to steal your thunder, Bryce, and just remind you that when you download the Phoenix app, which there'll be more information about that in our little outro, please be sure to join the Rise, Recover, Live podcast group, because we really want to start having more conversations in there. We want to connect as a community, because this is our podcast. And we want you to be part of that
and when
convo.
you join the podcast group, make sure you go in there and tell Liz to give me my thunder back. That it's not cool to steal people's thunder.
I am a thunder stealer, and I am sorry. I'll let you have the thunder next time. All right. Well, for now, that's all we got. Rate and review. If you could be so kind, send this episode to somebody that you think would benefit. I can't imagine who wouldn't benefit. And we'll catch you next week. Same place, same time.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.